In this video, I'm going to show you how to do 3 seam finishes. The first one we're going to do is a French seam. You'll need to place your fabric with the wrong sides together, which means the more colorful side will be facing out. When you take it to the sewing machine, you're going to sew a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Don't forget to start in from the end and back stitch so that you'll be locking your stitches in place. Once you press it open, you're going to come back here and you're going to trim off that seam allowance to 1/8 of an inch. This is going to allow you to encase this raw edge here in the seam allowance that we're going to sew next, which will be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I like this finish because if you don't have a serger or an overlock machine, this is a nice clean way to finish the inside of your garment. And I really like when the inside of my garment looks just as good as the outside. And that's the finished product. And that's the seam. It looks really nice and clean on the inside. Now the next seam finish I'm going to show you is a Hong Kong. And your fabric is going to be placed right sides together like you would normally sew a garment. And you can sew it at the seam allowance that your pattern calls for. If it's a 1/2 inch, do a 1/2 inch. If it's a 5/8, do a 5/8. And now take it to the iron and press that seam allowance open, just like this. And these are the raw edges that we're going to finish. Now you're going to work with one layer of your seam allowance at a time. Now I'm using a single fold bias tape, and I'm going to take the raw edge here and I'm going to align it with the raw edge of my garment. And I'm going to stitch right in this little crease. I used to think this was very difficult when I first saw it, but it really is just as easy as it looks in this video. Now what we're going to do is open the rest of that bias tape up and just flip it over to the back. But I'm not folding it where I sewed it to the seam allowance. I'm folding it where the fabric ends underneath, where the the seam allowance ends, so that you have a nice trim. And here you can sew either in the ditch, right where you sew the bias tape to the seam allowance, or you can sew it just a little bit in on the seam allowance to make it look more of a top stitching look. And just take it all the way down. And that's it. Really, really easy to do, and it gives it a really, really nice look. Now, if you don't have bias tape and you don't have a serger or an overlock machine, all you really need to do is fold that other seam allowance under about 1/8 of an inch and just sew it right along that fold. And that's all there is to it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you're notified when I upload more videos.